Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So let's start with our analysis for 18th of October. So Supreme Court bench clearly बोल दिया है कि they cannot legalize the same-sex marriage because they feel कि it is only the legislature which can recognize such a marriage. So as we talk about judicial activism or judicial overreach. So it feels that it would be judicial overreach when you talk about the principle of separation of powers, which is mentioned by the Constitution. So if Supreme Court takes the lead in this thing, in legalizing the same-sex marriage, so it would be a case of judicial overreach. It can lead to the violation of this principle of the separation of powers. And right now, the courts cannot intervene. So once the legislatures it goes ahead with this legalization, then it becomes the responsibility of the Supreme Court in order to check whether that amendment or the legalization, whether that is constitutionally valid or not. So interpretation of that and ensuring that that remains in consonance with the Constitution, that is then the responsibility and the duty of the Supreme Court. And also very important thing that has been mentioned by the Supreme Court benches that there is no fundamental right to marry. So this is very, very important development. Red alert. So in this picture, you can see that the sea in Puducherry turned red, alarming the residents. So water pollution is a concern over here. Coastal management expert said that the phenomenon it was due to abundance or bloom of algae as a result of there being more nutrients in the water. So it is due to eutrophication of water because of more or the rising concentration of these nutrients in the water. It leads to situation or higher possibility of algal blooms. So algal blooms, they are not good for the health of the water, and this is being visible in the sea in Puducherry. So even this is a concern when we talk about maintaining good quality of water. So even for the lakes, this aspect is important, and this allows the algae to proliferate into a red tide, which harms the marine life. So this is not good for even the food cycle that we have, the food web that we have, because ultimately it in a way indirectly also hampers the human health, not just the marine life. So marine life के perspective से definitely coastal areas में fishing is one of the important livelihood opportunities for the people. Fishermen, there are large number of fishermen community which reside along the coastal area. So it also impacts their livelihood, and this is an economic impact of the algal blooms. So as a solution, we can go ahead with the monitoring of the nutrient levels, ensuring that the industrial waste which is dumped into the oceans and rivers, that is treated and then that is released into the water. So one good innovative initiative by the Defense Ministry is that Defense Ministry ने अपने departments को बोला है कि आप selfie point setup करो so as to showcase the good work by them. So Ministry of Defense has directed the departments so that एक तरीके से geo-tagged selfie points create किए जाएं to showcase the good works which are done in the defense sector. So almost around creation of 822 selfie points has been suggested. So this is basically an initiative when it comes to being aware about what are new developments happening as far as India's defense sector is concerned when we talk about what are the new areas, the new reforms that we are initiating. So of late we are seeing that whether it comes to the development of infrastructure in the border regions, be it like construction of roads, bridges, setting up more railway lines over there. And apart from this, we have the Vibrant Village program also. Then when we talk about the Nari Shakti women empowerment, we are seeing permanent commission being given to women. So women taking up the lead, that is also an important reform that. We can talk about the defense sector. Apart from this, we are focusing upon self-sufficiency, indigenization of the arms and the weaponry that we have. So therein the role of DRDO becomes very important in terms of research and development. And also, one more important point is the border tourism. So these are few areas where we are focusing upon. So when we talk about the Manipur issue, we saw ethnic violence. So therein the main concern was the tribal community here, the Kuki community. They were protesting against the one of the suggestions by the High Court that the majority community, that is Metis, which reside in the valley regions of Manipur, unko scheduled tribe status diya jana chahiye. So this was basically, it was the reason which led to the beginning of this ethnic violence in Manipur. So when we go into the dynamics and look into the history, क्या पहले भी ऐसी demands उठी या नहीं उठी, and उस time पे क्या result रहा, क्या outcome रहा, तो ST status for the Metis it was examined and 1982 में and 2001 में इसको reject कर दिया गया था. So what were the grounds of rejection? Let's understand that. So the Union government, however, it did not submit any of these records before the single judge bench which was hearing the Metis petition. So as I was just telling you guys, that it was against the High Court order which triggered the eruption of violence between the valley-based Metis community, जो मणिपुर में majority community है. तो majority community को आप ST status दे रहे. This was basically, it irked the tribal community, that is the Kuki-Zo community, which resides in the hilly regions. And we have seen violation of human rights. We are seeing how basically women rights, they were violated, women's safety that was compromised. There were deaths of civilians, people were burnt alive on roads, and we basically saw the security infrastructure collapsing in the state of Manipur, how law and order was disturbed. Then there was another issue regarding the implementation of AFSPA Act. Even then, there was a concern by the tribal community कि why only in the hilly regions आपने AFSPA Act को implement किया है? Why not in the valley region जहाँ पे majority community reside करती है? So the main reason tha behind this rejection in 1982 and 2001, the main reason that was cited was that majority community, that is Metis, they do not appear to possess tribal characteristics, इसलिए हम उनको ST status नहीं दे सकते. And this was the main reason. So this is one of the criterias when it comes to deciding whether ST status दिया जाना चाहिए या नहीं दिया जाना चाहिए. So herein we have the Ministry of Social Justice, which is involved, which looks into all these matters. So herein the ministry was revisiting the SC/ST list of different states and union territories. So one of the solutions which is coming up from Munnar, that is Kerala, to prevent the landslides is that अगर आप bamboo plant करोगे along the gap roads, so वो हमें help कर सकता है in averting the landslips. So this can be again applicable in case of the hilly states also. So plantation of different trees which can help in binding the soil, because we are undertaking so much of deforestation activities under the garb of development. So for that unscientific, unplanned development, one of the results that we're seeing is increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters because of anthropogenic reasons is rising. So this is one of the possible solutions which can be even thought about as far as the all the hilly states, hilly regions are concerned. So when we talk about the healthcare system in India, the healthcare infrastructure and how the basically entire healthcare network it works in India. So one of the possible again reform measures which this particular editorial is suggesting is that centralized procurement can help us. So pooled procurement by the central government, जब हम बात करते हैं ड्रग्स प्रोक्योरमेंट की, it can help in revolutionizing the healthcare system in India. So how it would be helping in revolutionizing, kya uske multiplier effects rahenge, it's important to understand that. So in India, firstly, when we talk about the percentage of GDP that is assigned for the healthcare services is 1.35%. We have the target of at least increasing up till 2.5%. So that is one of the areas where we're targeting it increases to 2.5% of the GDP. Yesterday we talked about the importance of palliative care. क्यों इतना important है? What are the problems that were taken up? So that is one aspect of the healthcare services which are providing. How basically we have the entire superstructure of the healthcare services in India. We focus much upon the curative care. So आज जो हम reform measure की बात करते हैं specifically to the pharma sector also, and definitely it is directly related to the quality of the healthcare when we talk about the timely and adequate availability of affordable drugs pan India. So in India, many countries and international organizations, including McDonald's, they have shown that a pooled buyer model for the drug procurement, it addresses many issues. So issues which are related to the price efficiency, as we talk about central procurement. So when we talk about it would be helping in terms of the scale. So higher amount of procurement. So this would also help in bringing down the prices of the drugs. So it will lead to price efficiency. Stockhouse problem, will be having proper data, will be monitoring how much stock is available, कितना और procure किया जाना चाहिए, कौन सी medicines again कहाँ पे we are falling short, कहाँ पे we are having the adequate amount, वो हम properly through data analytics properly monitor कर पाएंगे. Accordingly we can take the measures as well. Quality concerns भी हम address कर पाएंगे. So quality concern is another aspect. So but for reasons that have remained mysterious for decades, central government chooses to ignore what are the merits of the pool procurement when it comes to schemes like the central government health scheme that we have, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, and employee state insurance scheme. So Jan Aushadhi Kendras jo government ne banaye hain under the scheme, they are again proving very effective, very useful, very beneficial. So instead of going by that model, basically उसी model को हमें और expand करना है at larger scale. So even when we talk about the corporate hospital chains also, they are also very well aware. So we acknowledge कि pooled procurement, centralized procurement के क्या benefits है, they are basically being acknowledged, but we are not taking action on that. So for years on end, they have conducted direct negotiations with the pharmaceutical companies, and they have availed of significant discounts also. So when you go for mass procurement, so you are also getting significant discount, which would be again helping in even reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure of the patients. So when we talk about the issue of quality, so as we're talking about proper standards, quality standards should be formulated. उसमें कोई ambiguity नहीं होनी चाहिए, and this should be applicable to each and every drug that is being manufactured by India, that is being imported in India, and it should not be only restricted to the cough syrup. So this is one thing. We are having CDSU, which is again the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, which looks into monitoring the quality of the drugs that are being manufactured. We talked about 3-4 amendments जो लॉ में किए गए हैं in order to ensure कि quality compromise ना हो. So finally, in addition to cost savings, buyers clubs, they can also ensure better quality by having the supplies tested independently rather than having to rely on the drug regulator to ensure the quality. So herein जो burden है drug regulator के ऊपर भी when it comes to ensuring good quality pharmaceuticals being produced in India. So this burden can also be decentralized in terms of जो centrally procure करेगा drugs को, be it again the corporate hospitals or even the government. So they should also firstly ensure कि जो supplies वो buy करने वाले हैं, procure करने वाले हैं, उनको वो पहले टेस्टिंग के लिए भेजे. सो कहीं ना कहीं वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, वो ड्यूटी उनके ऊपर भी आ जाती है. सो इट वुड बी नॉट ओनली दैट द ड्रग रेगुलेटर वुड बी इंश्योरिंग, बिकॉज that is kind of a huge burden, and kahin na kahin there are possibility of mistakes also. So what are the allegations on Adani coal imports? So although we'll not take up this in too much of detail, but what are the allegations we need to be aware? Kya allegations hain? So here we see recent report which was published by the Financial Times. They have stated that Adani Group appear to have imported billions of dollars of coal at prices above their market value. So it is being stated, these are allegations. So it just appears कि ऐसा किया गया है कि billions of dollars में उन्होंने जो coal को import किया, जो जिस price पे उसको import किया, that was above the market value. For example, the bulk carrier DL Acacia transported this much tons of coal. Export records mention the price of the commodity at. Basically, prices को manipulate किया गया है. Whereas Adani Group का जो reply आया है, counter आया है, they say कि जो ये report है, it has ignored कि जो coal procure किया गया है from India, it was done on long-term supply basis through open, transparent, global bidding process, thereby eliminating any possibility of price manipulation. So this is what Adani says. So we are seeing that we are having the target of meeting the SDG goals by 2030. But when we talk about are we on the proper timeline when it comes to meeting those targets by 2030, क्या और हमें improve करने की ज़रूरत है? So that is one area. एक जो problem है when it comes to meeting those targets on time is the synergistic barriers which exist. So जो measures हम ले रहे हैं, different measures, they need to be synergized. मतलब counter impact एक दोनों का beneficial impact होना चाहिए of the measures, so that collectively we are moving in that one particular direction of meeting those SDG goals that we have. So synergistic barriers, they have come to the fore as the world is set to achieve only 15% of 169 targets which are there, only 15%. So that's very minimal, but it is very low. So even we're talking about global level, but comparatively when we talk about India, so we are on track meeting several SDG goals compared to the developed world also. So as such, there is not any kind of major problem when it comes to India's growth path or pattern to achieve the SDG goals. So there are synergies and trade-offs जो exist करते हैं in pursuit of the specific SDGs. So one such paper is published in the Journals of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They have identified 5 type की dis-synergies exist करती हैं, which can be estimated along the value chain of an SDG intervention, those arising from resource allocations, creation of enabling environments, co-benefits, cost effectiveness, and saturation limits. So in areas में basically we do not see much of synergy, मतलब interdependence इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं है. Then there exists barrier for the small scale applications. So policymakers said कि policy making processes जो हैं, they are generally robust with a clear view कि क्या synergistic outcomes हो सकते हैं, especially जब हम बात करते हैं multi stakeholder approach to policy making. For example, India में when we talk about the push for renewable energy, it started with both energy security also and air pollution in focus. So initially when we started with this journey, हमारा मेन फोकस था इंश्योरिंग एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी एंड एयर पोल्यूशन पे भी फोकस करना, एंड दिस रिसीव्ड एन एम्पटस विद द क्लाइमेट कमिटमेंट्स आल्सो. जो हमारे क्लाइमेट कमिटमेंट्स थी, these were in sync with the commitments. However, it hasn't been able to leverage जो हमारे health benefits थे arising from the lower air pollution to strengthen arguments for greater incentives for the renewables. So यहाँ पे भी हमें इतनी synergy नहीं दिखाई दी when it comes to when we were focusing upon improving the air quality. So uske jo health benefits the, we did not see them transforming into the greater incentives for the renewables. So this is one of the problems that has been identified. So simply recognizing kya interlinks have without a robust analysis and understanding of the institutional barriers, it is not going to yield the outcomes which India desires. So if we are not able to, firstly to identify and recognize करना important है, उसके बाद उसको समझना and planning कि how we can overcome that challenge, that is important. So until and unless we are not able to simply recognize कहाँ पे interlinkage में problems आ रही हैं, क्या problems हैं, कैसे उनको address किया जाएगा, until then we will not be on track to meet जो हमारे basically outcomes हम desire करते हैं, जो हमने target हमारे लिए set किया है. सो जो भी नई इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इंडिया में हो रही है, जो भी नए इनिशिएटिव्स हम ले रहे हैं, अगर वो हाई कार्बन आउटकम में रिजल्ट करेगा, सो दिस विल लाइकली रिजल्ट इन हायर डिसएनर्जीज और ट्रेड ऑफ्स इन आवर एबिलिटी टू अचीव आवर एनर्जी एंड द क्लाइमेट गोल्स. सो ईच एंड एवरी इनिशिएटिव जहां पे भी हम इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं, जहां पे भी फाइनेंसेस फ्लो कर रहे हैं, कौन से सेक्टर में ज्यादा फ्लो कर रहे हैं, we need to ensure कि again it is not leading to high carbon emissions or even carbon emissions, as we have the target of being a carbon neutral country by 2070. So if basically we are doing certain acts जिसकी वजह से which are the results are counter to our targets, तो उसकी वजह से जो गैप है, जो ऑलरेडी जो डिसएनर्जीज एग्जिस्ट करती हैं, वो और इंक्रीज हो सकती है. उसकी वजह से ऑब्वियसली दैट इज वन ऑफ द ट्रेड ऑफ्स जो एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, और ट्रेड ऑफ्स इंक्रीज होगा तो हमें थोड़ा और हमारे टारगेट से दूर खींचेगा. So case for the marriage equality. So when we talk about marriage equality, legalizing the same-sex marriage, so in a way, can we think that this is also one of the initiatives going forward or going closer towards establishing gender equality? Because when we talk about even the concept, the idea of gender equality, we always talk about equality between men and women. We never talk about the third gender. So this becomes an important question. And then what are the legal arguments for the same-sex marriage? Certain legal arguments for that. And as we just saw in the very beginning, Supreme Court has clearly stated that right to marry is not a fundamental right. So legal recognition of the queerness and the love should not be opposed by the state or by some supposedly well-meaning proponents of the doctrine of separation of powers. Queerness and queer love deserves not just the legal recognition by the state, but it needs to be celebrated. Abhi, we are fighting it gets the legal recognition. But actually, जो ये fight है, if we think about this, it like very narrow kind of thinking, और बहुत छोटी चीज के लिए लड़ाई हो रही है. We need to actually celebrate this, and celebrate हम तभी कर पाएंगे when each and every person in society, firstly we understand कि it is not again, इसको हमें बायसनेस के पर्सपेक्टिव से या डिस्क्रिमिनेशन के पर्सपेक्टिव से नहीं देखना चाहिए. जो बिहेवियरल चेंज में विल स्टार्ट एक्सेप्टिंग ऑल दीज थिंग्स, विल एक्सेप्टिंग कि वी ऑल आर वन व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट ह्यूमंस. हम क्यों ना जेंडर के बेसिस पे डिस्क्रिमिनेट करते हैं, देन ओनली वी कैन टॉक अबाउट कि एक्चुअली हम जो डिफरेंसेस हैं, या आई वुड से जो डाइवर्सिटी एग्जिस्ट करती है, तभी हम उसको बोलेंगे कि यस वी आर सेलिब्रेटिंग द डाइवर्सिटी दैट वी हैव. सो फर्स्ट एक आर्ग्यूमेंट ये है कि लीगलाइजेशन द सेम सेक्स मैरिज, इट विल डिस्ट्रॉय द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ फैमिली व्हिच इज द फंडामेंटल बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक ऑफ द सोसाइटी. So for long, we're seeing third gender people, they have had to deal with their rights being granted as gifts from the heteronormative society, but that is no more. They are also equal citizens of the country and they deserve the same rights as other people. So queer people, they're demanding their equal rights. As I say, definitely one of them is the legal recognition of same-sex marriage. So it is not just of marriage also, but of horizontal reservation and protection from the natal families. So they should also be viewed as equal citizens of the democratic nation, that's India. And yesterday also we were talking about that we are having different personal laws when we talk about marriage or divorce. So usme accordingly we'll need to go ahead with certain constitutional amendments, and also when we talk about the societal acceptability of even giving recognition. So until and unless society will not recognize it, will not accept this, then we can say कि तब तक इवन इफ आप उसको लीगली वैलिड कर दोगे, बट अगेन अगर हम सोसाइटी में देख रहे हैं कि स्टिल सम काइंड ऑफ opposition, hatred exist, so we can't say कि actually that becomes what we intended for. So it is true that laws which are relating to marriage, definitely कहीं ना कहीं कुछ religious genesis exist करती हैं. We cannot deny that. However, जो Indian law on marriage है, that is a mixture of common law and the religion. So it's a mixture. It is not completely on the basis of the religious ideas and the principles, practices that we have been following. It's a mixture of law and religion. So traditionally, marriage under the Hindu law, it is sacrament, and it stopped being so जब हम बात करते हैं divorce was introduced. So marriage is now nothing but a status जो confer किया जाता है by law. And court said कि सबरीमाला केस की जब बात करते हैं, religion must give way to the constitutional morality. Though a review of the judgment is still pending, but this was one idea that came out of this case. Nevertheless, most parties in the marriage equality case before the court, they are those who want to get married under the Hindu Marriage Act. So even when we talk about Hinduism, so queer relationships, they were not an aberration in Hinduism, as there are different scholars जिन्होंने demonstrate किया है इस चीज को. So the remaining petitions जो file की गई under the Special Marriage Act, they argue for the marriage equality under all the religious laws. So we are moving forward as far as the Gaganyaan mission is concerned. So strengthened in a human-rated rocket that is all ready for again going ahead for the testing. So hundreds of tests planned kiए गए हैं as we are preparing to send astronauts into space in 2025. So we have sought a lot of technology from countries like Russia, Europe, and the US. बट बहुत सारी ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजीज हैं जो इंडिया तक नहीं पहुंची है, तो वो डिनाई की गई, या जो अगेन टाइमलाइन था उसको डिले किया जा रहा है. So the space agency will have to develop those systems like environmental control की हम बात करें, life support systems, indigenously हमें ये technologies को develop करनी पड़ेंगी. So the ISRO chairman says number of astronauts they would be sent to the orbit in first attempts, even that is also not fixed. मतलब कितने astronauts send किए जाएंगे, the number is not fixed as of now. So again, even in the space industry, the space sector, we are seeing why even the need for indigenization is so important. Self-reliance यहाँ पे भी इतना important है. And let me just share this thing with you guys. When we talk about the Chandrayaan 3 mission or the MOM mission, जो cost of space missions हैं इंडिया में बहुत कम रहता है comparatively to other global space agencies which are operating. So उसके पीछे एक रीजन ये था, इनिशियली व्हेन इंडिया कंडक्टेड द न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट, उस टाइम पे इंडिया के ऊपर सैंक्शंस पुट कर दिए गए. तो उस टाइम पे अगेन हमारा जो स्पेस सेक्टर था दैट वाज इन नेसेंट स्टेजेस, so it was developing. तो जो हमारे मिशन थे they were hampered because of those sanctions which were imposed in India. उसकी वजह से हम अगेन टेक्नोलॉजी इंपोर्ट नहीं कर पाए. एंड इट इज देन दैट वी स्टार्टेड फोकसिंग अपॉन कि हम डोमेस्टिकली कैसे टेक्नोलॉजी और जो डेवलपमेंट्स है, जो टेक्नोलॉजी हमें चाहिए, हम उसको कैसे डोमेस्टिकली इंडिपेंडेंटली उसको इंडिजिनाइज कर सकते हैं, सो दैट अगेन हमें फ्यूचर में उस टाइम पे जो माइंडसेट था दैट वाज अगेन एक ही एरिया, जो एक ही सोल्यूशन हमारे पास एग्जिस्ट करता था कि अब हमें खुद ही चीजें डेवलप करनी पड़ेगी. सो अल्टीमेटली वो खुद डेवलप करते करते जो कॉस्ट था, बिकॉज वी वर डेवलपिंग दैट ऑन आवर ओन, and we were also taking support from many companies, also indigenous companies that were supporting India. So uski wajah se jo hamara cost aaya of having different technological equipments that we manufactured, wo cost bahut kam aaya. So that is one of the main reasons why even our space missions are so competitive in terms of the cost. So यहाँ पे भी हमें कुछ similar kind of problems देखने को मिल रहे हैं in terms of the technological support and the equipments that we have not received from different countries, although they were promised to us. So there are different, again, things have been mentioned as far as technology is concerned, like the integrated vehicle health management system, which is the intelligence. So it will sense kya imminent failure honge, and it will also take the abort action. So these are some of the, again, conceptual things. And then there is ECLSS system. So this will be developed internally. Another mission that again is being suggested by Prime Minister is that his directed ISRO to land man on moon by 2040 and work towards interplanetary missions also. So ये कुछ future I would say possibilities हैं, future में they can be real things also. So we are having again कि different और कौन से space sector में areas है, we have sent the Aditya L1 mission to study the sun. So we are trying to explore, we're trying to again advance and be successful in these different types of missions that we're trying to explore. Then another area is adoption of children. So where we have Kara when it comes to what is the procedure for adopting a child. So Supreme Court is divided on allowing the unmarried couples to adopt the children. See, यहाँ पे जो concern है unmarried couples हैं, the things are not certain. So the again fundamental rights of the child when it comes to the safety of life, and even after that also their safety, um, it would be directly impacting the life of the child, their career options, their studies, and it can also lead to certain kind of mental health issues also for the child. So these are some of the concerns when it comes to whether we need to, allow the unmarried couples to adopt children jointly or not. So Chief Justice held कि जो Regulation 5 है of the adoption regulation, that is ultra wires the JJ Act, and it is also violative the fundamental rights. But whereas we have Justices Bhatt, Kohli, and Narasimha, they said that this rule was not void. So here in Supreme Court was also divided on their opinion on this. So firstly, Juvenile Justice Act जो regulation 5 है, which talks about adoption regulation, it bars the unmarried partners from being prospective adoptive parents, as ultra wires the Juvenile Justice Act and violative of the fundamental rights the queer couples. So even when we talk about the same-sex couples, so बहुत सारे ऐसे areas ऐसी rights है when we start thinking कि when we talk about their rights to adopt a child, so वहाँ पे भी we are not having any certainty or legal recognition for that. So CARAs were talking about Central Adoption Resource Authority and Center. They should appropriately consider the realities of de facto families where single individuals, they were permitted to adopt. The single individuals, they have the permission, they can adopt the child and then start living with a non-matrimonial relationship also. So different possibilities, different scenarios exist karte. So again, we need to ensure the rights of the child are not compromised and violated. And even the rights of the parents who are adopting a child, even they are balanced. So at the same time, unmarried relationships को हम again negative angle से भी नहीं देख सकते हैं हमेशा. They cannot be characterized as fleeting the relationships which are unstable by their very nature. Marriage is also not necessarily the bedrock on which families and households are built. So even in case of marriage also, we can't say that things are going to be that way in even future times also. Marriage can also result into instability, it can result into divorce, it can result to again certain actions and how things can even change, which can again impact the life of a child as well. So again, isko negative angle se nahi dekhna chahiye. So Supreme Court, it held that transgender persons in the heterosexual relationships, they have the right to marry under the existing laws. So this is one thing which has been highlighted by the Supreme Court, कि जो हमारे existing laws हैं, transgender person, they have the right to marry under that as well. So held that transgender persons in heterosexual relationships, they have the freedom and entitlement to marry under the existing statutory provisions. And gender of a person is not the same as their sexuality. So even gender को भी क्या, what is the definition of gender? What is the idea of gender? क्या उसको आप हमेशा sexuality से associate करके समझोगे? It is beyond that. So a person is a transgender person by virtue of their gender identity. And a transgender person may be heterosexual or homosexual or of any other sexuality also. So if a transgender person is in a heterosexual relationship and wishes to marry their partner, such a marriage would be recognized by the laws governing the marriage. So this has been made clear by the CGI. Coming to the business page. So regulators said to inquire funds rules violations. So market regulators, SEBI and RBI, they are investigating a lot of cases jahan pe we are seeing there's a possibility of alternative investment funds. Allegedly, they are misusing the funds to circumvent the regulations, including जब हम बात करते हैं evergreening of the stressed loans. So evergreening of stressed loans का मतलब ये होता है, suppose there's a borrower, उनको पहले loan दिया गया and they have defaulted on that loan and this continues for a longer time period, तो वो ultimately stressed asset बन गया, वो NPA बन गया. अब उस loan को revive करने के लिए उसी इंडिविजुअल को, सेम बोरोवर को और लोन दिया जाता है सो दैट वो अपना जो पुराना लोन है उसको रीपे कर सके. तो इसको बोलते हैं एवरग्रीनिंग ऑफ द स्ट्रेस्ड लोन्स. सो बेसिकली दिस इज समथिंग व्हिच इज इलीगल एंड It is being alleged कि जो alternative investment funds उनके पास जो पैसा आ रहा है, they are misusing that funds, they are using that fund for evergreening of the stressed assets. So इसमें basically SEBI and RBI, they are looking into, they are investigating all these cases. So blueprint for India's maritime economy. So this has been unveiled by our Prime Minister. We are having the Global Maritime Summit 2023. So this blueprint, कौन से areas outline किए जा रहे हैं? It is including strategic initiatives which aim at enhancing the port facilities, promoting sustainable practices when we talk about green maritime, green shipping, facilitating global collaboration. So underscoring जो भी role है of the sea routes in the global trade, he has emphasized that there's a need for reliable global supply chain in the post-corona era. So definitely, when we see major proportion of the world trade that happens through the sea route via the again the shipping. So definitely ensuring the security, the stability of these sea routes becomes important, and global supply chains की smoothness, connectivity, कहीं ना कहीं it is related to the maritime routes as well. So green shipping, port-led development की हम बात करेंगे, even यहाँ पे security measures कैसे हम और deploy कर सकते हैं along the coast. Then livelihood opportunity, we talk about blue economy, therein also it becomes important. So that is some of the areas where we'll be focusing upon in future. Or economic opportunities हम कैसे और explore कर सकते हैं in terms of the nutrient rich oceans जो seabed है अभी we have not reached that, or we can say कि इतना भी हमने explore नहीं किया है. So therein also what minerals do we discover that can again open up another whole lot of opportunities for further development. So last decade में we see जो capacity है major ports की India में that has doubled, and the turnaround time for the big vessels even that has come down to less than 24 hours compared to 42 hours earlier. So even logistics cost, which is associated with the maritime sector, that is also one of the important sub areas. So we have laid down foundation of projects worth rupees 23,000 crores. So they are all aligned with India's maritime blue economy. And even when we talk about the insurance facilities for, suppose if there is any disaster or any attacks which happens, which affects again the trade or the goods that are being carried. So insurance is also an important aspect. So India is going to double the infrastructure spending to rupees 143 lakh crores. So we'll spend close to rupees 143 lakh crores on infrastructure between the fiscal year 2024 and 2030, which is more than twice rupees 67 lakh crores, which was spent in the past 7 financial years starting from 2017. So doubling of the infrastructure spending. Firstly, this is part of capital expenditure, which leads to more capital accumulation. There is more capital accumulation that is also going to help the workers, the laborer also, increasing their productivity, which would again impact, which was going to have an impact on even their wages, the income that they're going to earn. And ultimately, if their purchasing power improves, so that is going to feed into the higher amount of consumption demands. So that cycle, basically, this is again one virtuous cycle, which is very important. So कहाँ पे हमारे again ज़्यादा infrastructure spending focus रहने वाली है? Of the total rupees, of the total amount, we see rupees 36.6 lakh crores जो है वो green investments में जाएगा, which marks a 5-time rise. So when we talk about green energy transition, so major focus is going to be there. Per capita income जो है, that is increasing, and right now it is at $2,500, and we have the target to achieve it, to make it up till $4,500 by 2031, so that we can create a middle income country. But when we talk about the middle income trap, so we need to ensure that per capita income जो growth है, that that is it is sustainable so that हम middle income track में ना फंस के रह जाएं. Coming to the Mint newspaper, so we see faster, higher, and stronger. So when we talk about the games and the economy, 2036 India has bid कि India 2036 Olympic Games को host करना चाहते हैं. So how much will it cost us for this carrying out a 16-day event? And क्या ये worth the effort होगा या नहीं होगा? So again, इसके क्या और economic implications हो सकते हैं if we go ahead with the hosting 2036 Olympics? So when we talk about the cost, so countries, they spend around 50 to $100 million for even unsuccessful bids also. When it talks about bidding, choosing कौन सी city में कौन सी country में host किया जाएगा, which again it can inflate to billions of dollars also in preparing for the event in case of successful bid. So bidding में you have to spend a lot. उसके बाद again for the preparations ensuring कि this entire event remains successful, वहाँ पे भी a lot of amount of money is put in investment. So Tokyo has spent around $150 million for its failed 2016 bid, which is half as much again for its successful 2020 bid. Then Toronto decided not to bid as it could not afford $60 million it needed for the 2024 bid. So ये कुछ again dynamics हैं. And the cost of hosting this event, it includes building of stadiums, beefing up of the infrastructure for the influx of the athletes and the tourists. That has also jumped significantly since the Atlanta Games in 1996. So with obviously inflation is also on the rise. We are seeing crude oil prices are also on the rise. So the cost of hosting this event है, that goes up. So funding कहाँ से आती है for hosting these games? So जितने भी most of the expenses हैं infrastructure की बात करो, that is borne by the local government. तो national government है, entire burden is on them. So we need to again look into the fiscal dynamics also. जो हमारा fiscal deficit target है, क्या वो कितना इंक्रीज हो जाएगा, क्या हम उसको कंट्रोल कर पाएंगे, हैंडल कर पाएंगे, क्या वो सेफर लिमिट्स में रहेगा if even we are successful in bidding and finally India would be hosting the 2036 Olympic Games or not. So it is spread over the years in the country's budget. It takes years to overcome that amount. But again, कितना आप revenue expenditure के form में spend करोगे, कितना आप capital expenditure के form में spend करोगे, so उसके भी अलग अपने important implications रहेंगे. Countries mostly they borrow the fund cost overruns. International Olympic Committee है, वो share करती है कुछ revenue from the event with the host country, but that is a small amount. तो उससे इतना कोई major benefit नहीं होता to the host country. So is it really worth the effort or not? और या जितना पैसा लगाया जाएगा, is it really worth or not? So we see that जो overzealous spending देखी जाती है during the preparation for these events, it can be disastrous also. So it took Canada 30 years to repay the debt from 1976 Montreal Games. You can imagine कितना एक तरीके से जो हमारा ग्रोथ पाथ है उसके ऊपर डायरेक्ट एंड मैसिव इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है इफ यू आर नॉट प्रॉपरली प्लानिंग, कहाँ पे फाइनेंसेस जाएंगे, कैसे इन्वेस्टमेंट्स होंगी, कैसे हम फिस्कल डेट को हैंडल करेंगे, उसके लिए भी अगर हमारे पास प्रॉपर प्लानिंग नहीं है, सो थिंग्स कैन टर्न आउट टू बी डिजास्टरस फॉर द एंटायर कंट्री एंड डेफिनेटली इट कैन ऑल्सो लीड टू एन इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस ऑल्सो अगर हम डेट को प्रॉपरली मैनेज और हैंडल नहीं कर पाते हैं तो. एंड अगेन नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट्स भी एग्जिस्ट करते हैं बट पॉजिटिव आउटकम्स भी हो सकते हैं ऑफ होस्टिंग दीज इवेंट्स से जितना पैसा इन्वेस्ट किया जाता है. इन केस ऑफ ब्राजील वी सॉ कि in case of Brazil, this event accelerated the GDP growth by at least 0.8%. So accordingly, it depends कि आने वाले टाइम में भी अभी जो आप पब्लिक एक्सपेंडिचर करोगे in terms of building the world class स्पोर्ट्स फैसिलिटीज, सो वो आपके स्पोर्ट्स सेक्टर को और कैसे बूस्ट कर सकती है, सस्टेनेबिलिटी प्रोवाइड करेगी। जो चैलेंजेस एग्जिस्ट करते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ इवन अगेन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में भी इंडिया में प्रोफेशनल क्वालिटी ऑफ इक्विपमेंट्स अवेलेबल नहीं रहते हैं, एंड जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है अगेन जो डेंसिटी है दैट इज ऑल्सो वेरी लो। सो वो कैसे हमारे स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन को और हेल्प करेगा, डेफिनेटली उसका एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट भी हो सकता है। Quote of the day is coming from Greta Thunberg, who's the environmental activist. She says, "The world is drowning in fossil fuels. Our hopes and dreams and lives are being washed away by a flood of greenwashing and lies. It has been clear for decades that the fossil fuel industries were well aware of the consequences of their business models, and yet they have done nothing." तो बहुत सारे aspects यहाँ mention किए गए हैं. Firstly, we are drowning in fossil fuels when we talk about even our dependence upon the coal or the thermal power plants that is going to increase in future. So this is one aspect because we can't compromise with the energy security, although we are focusing upon green energy transition. Apart from this, greenwashing कैसे, in a way, greenwashing, I tell you the meaning. So it is a practice which is used by companies in order to show कि जो वो activities undertake कर रहे हैं, जो initiatives वो ले रहे हैं, even under CSR, वो कहीं ना कहीं environment protection में help करेगी. But ultimately, that is not going to result into that. तो एक तरीके से green wash, मतलब जैसे we have the mind wash, तो green wash किया जाता है, ऐसा allege किया जाता है, ऐसा portray किया जाता है कि activities would keep the environment safe, या environmental safety की तरफ काम किया जा रहा है, but actually वो होता नहीं है. That is just a mere false perception and things are portrayed in that manner कि ऐसा लगे कि yes, it is trying to conserve the environment. So this is one area and this needs to be addressed. So this is again जो fossil fuel industries हैं, definitely एक point of time के बाद when things started I would say building up together, जब हमें impact देखने को मिल रहा था in terms of rising temperature, the global warming we were seeing. So consequences definitely हमें पता होता है कहीं ना कहीं कोई भी activity हम करें, अब चाहे वो fossil fuel industries हो, क्या किस तरीके से उनकी activities का impact हो रहा है. But despite knowing that, तो इसका मतलब है it led to failure of your environmental duties. So despite that also, they did not do anything. If they would have, taken that as a responsibility, as their duty towards the environmental conservation and environmental safety, and ultimately conservation of lives of the entire humankind, the mankind, तो आज it can be said कि आज हम इस situation में नहीं होते when we are fighting, when we are talking about कि how we can mitigate the efforts, the impacts of climate change, कैसे हम adapt कर सकते हैं. Taking up Financial Express newspaper. So let's see the important topics. So this we've already covered. We're almost going to double our spending on infrastructure by 2030. So when we talk about the fiscal debt for the states, that is a concern. Rising debt and guarantees, they are a concern for the states. According to ICRA, which is again credit rating agency, capital expenditure by 13 states have reviewed to rise by 29%. So that is only for 13 states. So how even state level borrowing, यहाँ पे भी state level जब हम debt management की बात करते हैं तो we often again talk about fiscal deficit at the union level. It is important कि states का जो borrowing pattern है वो कैसे shift हो रहा है, and जो पैसा वो borrow कर भी रहे हैं वो उसको कहाँ spend कर रहे हैं, कैसे spend कर रहे हैं. So some of these states like Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Kerala, MP, Maharashtra, we are seeing कि इनका जो capital expenditure spending hai, that is going to be rupees 6.2 trillion in the financial year 24 from around 4.8 trillion rupees. एंड अगेन ये भी एक इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है यहाँ समझना कि स्टेट्स को इतना बोरो क्यों करना पड़ रहा है। जब हम स्टेट्स का अगेन रिसीप्ट्स की बात करते हैं, स्टेट्स रेवेन्यू की बात करते हैं, तो यहाँ पे वी विल आल्सो टॉक अबाउट हाउ द फाइनेंशियल डेवोल्यूशन ऑफ द फंड्स व्हिच इज डिसाइडेड बाय द फाइनेंस कमीशन, उनका उसमें जो अगर कुछ पैटर्न चेंज हो रहा है तो वो कैसे स्टेट फाइनेंसेस को इम्पैक्ट कर रहा है कि स्टेट्स को अगेन इंक्रीज बोरोइंग करनी पड़ रही है। सो इवन व्हेन इट कम्स टू बोरोइंग बाय द स्टेट्स, तो ये भी देखना पड़ेगा व्हाट आर द सोर्सेज ऑफ बोरोइंग, कैसे स्टेट्स पैसा रेज कर रही है, कैसे स्टेट्स पैसा बोरो कर रही है। And even the GST compensation says there also we are seeing certain discomfort for the states. So that has not been going ahead as per the plans. वहां पे भी ये बोला गया कि स्टेट्स जो पेंडिंग अमाउंट है, जो गैप अमाउंट है, जो स्टेट्स क्लेम कर रहे हैं, स्टेट्स उसको बोरो कर सकते हैं। बट जब हम बात करते हैं जीएसटी कॉम्पनसेशन सेस की, तो स्टेट्स को वो पैसा वापस सेंटर को रिटर्न नहीं करना था। बट अगर स्टेट्स बोरो करेंगी तो वो स्टेट्स के ऊपर जो लाइबिलिटीज है वो इंक्रीज करेगा, वो स्टेट्स को पीरियोडिकली पैसा रीपे करना पड़ेगा। सो इन दो चीजों में बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंस है। So this we have already covered up. We have talked about evergreening of the stressed assets, and market regulators are looking into these cases. So as liquidity tightens, banks की जो overnight borrowing है that increases. सो वी आर सीइंग कि जो मार्जिनल स्टैंडिंग फैसिलिटी है, इसके अंडर जो इंटरेस्ट रेट रहता है, उस इंटरेस्ट रेट पे बैंक्स ओवरनाइट पर्पस के लिए बोरो करते हैं। सो विद द रिजर्व बैंक ड्राइंग अप जो एक्सेस लिक्विडिटी है, बैंक्स दे हैव इंक्रीज देयर बोरोइंग्स फ्रॉम द मार्जिनल स्टैंडिंग फैसिलिटी, शोइंग कि बैंक्स दे आर फेसिंग लिक्विडिटी स्ट्रेस। सो अगेन ये जो थोड़े चेंजेस किए जाते हैं फॉर शॉर्ट टाइम पीरियड, ये स्ट्रेस, ये बोल सकते हैं कि थोड़ा मिसमैच देखने को मिलता है, बट ultimately after certain point of time things they start falling in place. So जो marginal standing facility है, RBI facility provide करता है where lends money for the overnight purposes to banks. So rising borrowing from the MSF indicates कि there is increase in the liquidity stress in the system. So right now, the MSF rate that is at 6.75%, which is 25 basis points higher than the repo rate. So almost we can say कि repo rate से higher level पे ही MSF rate रहता है, क्योंकि आप immediate purpose पे या immediately you go ahead with this borrowing. तो इतने short notice पे getting funds, obviously अगर आप इसको common sense के through समझोगे, so that is going to cost you higher. So that is why MSF rate is little higher than the repo rate. So why we are seeing this liquidity stress is a result of the phased withdrawal of the incremental cash reserve ratio. Liquidity is tight in the system due to the tax related outflows also which are happening. So advance tax payments जो की जा रही है, GST payments जो हो रही है, उसकी वजह से भी we are seeing liquidity is drying up. And at the same time, we are also seeing, because rupee is depreciating, so RBI's intervention, the market is also, leading to supply of dollars. So supply of dollars happens in exchange of rupee. So uski wajah se bhi liquidity is drying up. So this is another factor behind the drying up of liquidity in the economy. And apart from this also, एक और trend जो visible है कि near term में we are seeing credit growth also remains strong. तो credit growth के साथ we are seeing कि जो deposits हैं वो same pace पे increase नहीं हो रहे, तो यहाँ पे भी ज़्यादा credit दिया जा रहा है, but opposite to that deposits banks में इतने या similar proportion, similar rate पे increase नहीं हो रहा है जिस rate से credit dispersal increase हो रहा है. Okay, in Indian Express newspaper, we'll directly jump on to the explained page. So Egypt is keeping the Gaza's Rafah border crossing shut. So Egypt is basically not allowing the inflow of refugees in Egypt. So here is the exact location of this Rafah crossing and इस region को where it is more closer towards Egypt. इसको हम बोलते हैं Sinai Peninsula. So here is the location of the Gaza city. This is the Gaza Strip, this lightly shaded region. And here we have Khan Yunis, and this is Israel. So where is this crossing? This is at south of Gaza Strip, एक narrow strip है. This is wedged between Israel, Egypt and the Mediterranean Sea. So ये जो crossing है इसको Egypt control करता है. So why this is restricted right now? Egypt is wary of the insecurity near the border with the Gaza in the northeastern Sinai, where it faced an Islamist insurgency that peaked after 2013 and it has now largely been suppressed. So this is the main reason why Egypt it has blocked it. And apart from this, location I've explained you. Sinai Peninsula के context में अगर हम location बात करें तो it is located in the northeastern Sinai Peninsula, south of the Gaza Strip. So Hamas took control of the Gaza in 2007, and Egypt has helped enforce a blockade of this enclave and heavily restricted the flow of the people and goods. So this has led to the violation of the UN Convention on Refugees, to which India is not a signatory. So Egypt का क्या role रहा है in this conflict between Israel and Palestine? So Egypt has acted as a mediator between these two factions during the past conflicts and periods of unrest. But in those situations, it has also locked down the border. It had allowed aid to enter and the medical evacuees to leave, but it has prevented any large scale movement of the people. So this has been the stance of Egypt as far as the refugee crisis is concerned. So this is also a violation of the human rights. People, they're not left with any option where to go. They can't go to Israel. They're struck within the Gaza Strip. They're not being allowed to enter Egypt. This is a gross violation of their human rights under the UN Convention of even refugees, the Geneva Convention also. So क्या efforts लिए जा रहे हैं to open this border? So UN it has urged Israel to avert this humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, warning कि इसकी वजह से food, fuel and even drinking water supplies they are running at dangerously lower levels. मतलब लोगों के पास खाना नहीं है खाने के लिए, there is no fuel. पीने के लिए पानी नहीं है. Where to live? The cities there, places, homes are being destroyed. Healthcare facilities नहीं है. So ultimately this is, I would say, kind of live death that they're going through. They're not having any option. कोई safer territory नहीं है उनके पास जाने के लिए. Hospitals are also struggling. So although Egypt aid provide कर रहा है, but again that is very smaller kind of help that it is providing. Although it can do a lot more. So again, this issue over legalization, the same-sex marriage. So कौन से 4 की important issues रहे हैं? इस पे 2 views रहे. Basically, Supreme Court bench was divided on this. So जब हम बात करते हैं fundamental right to marry. So petitioners argued that there exists a fundamental right to marry a person of own choice under the Constitution, and that the court must address denial of that right. So this was the argument of the petitioners कि fundamental right to marry a person of your own choice ये एक fundamental right है. if the court recognized कि एक fundamental right है, like it was identified जब हम बात करते हैं right to privacy की under the Aadhaar ruling in 2017, then it would cast an obligation on the state to protect this right. तब ये एक तरीके से स्टेट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, ड्यूटी, ऑब्लिगेशन हो जाएगा to protect this right to marry of even the transgender persons. So minority view में CGI, he was a part of this minority view. He did not agree with the petitioner's argument and बोला कि marriage is an inherent right that the state only regulates. तो state सिर्फ regulate करता है, otherwise marriage जो है एक inherent right है, हर एक human की inherent right है marriage. So minority view stated that marriage may not have attained the social and legal significance it currently has if the state had not regulated it through the law. So this was one argument that was put forward by the minority view, where even CJ was a part of the minority view. So agar broader perspective se hum dekhe, so CJ said कि marriage is not a fundamental in itself. It may have attained वो significance. आज के टाइम में वो इतना significant हो गया जो वो पहले नहीं था. That was because of the actions taken by the state to regulate it. It may have attained the significance because of the benefits which are realized through the regulation of marriage by the state. So as such, it is not a fundamental thing. Majority view का क्या कहना है on this? So agreeing with the CJI on this issue, majority view, it differentiated between, see, majority view, although they agreed with CJI, but उन्होंने बोला कि जब हम बात करते हैं differentiating between what is fundamentally important to an individual from an enforceable fundamental right. So इन दो चीजों को जब हम differently समझें, so इसमें fundamental importance of marriage remains कि it is based on your personal preference and it confers the social status also. But the importance of something to an individual does not per se justify कि वो एक आपको फंडामेंटल राइट हो जाता है. अगर कोई चीज आपके लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है तो इट डज नॉट मीन कि दैट इज योर फंडामेंटल राइट, या उसको हम बोल सकते हैं कि इट शुड बी योर फंडामेंटल राइट, इवन इफ दैट प्रेफरेंस एंजॉयज पॉपुलर एक्सेप्टेंस भी है एंड सपोर्ट, डिस्पाइट दैट इट इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट कि इट बिकम्स an enforceable fundamental right for an individual. So even ये similar logic US courts ने भी use किया है. They have underlined the rationale for declaring the right to marry a fundamental right as being essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness as it appears in their Declaration of Independence by free persons may not be sound. So herein you can go ahead with these four main issues. इसमें से second important जो issue उठाया गया, that was interpretation as a special marriage act. Then queer couples pay right to adopt a child. This we've already discussed. And option of civil unions for the queer couple. So these are other issues that were discussed. And इसमें again minority or majority view क्या था, that has been taken up. So that's all for the day. I hope you have clearly understood all the important topics that we took up today. And stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel.